younger individuals are going to be more comfortable with bots and digital engagement. As people's wealth increases, they tend to want more and more human engagement. The thing we find about money, it's very personal. The human in the loop does add a lot of value for folks. That's the emotional benefit. Yeah, it's fun to imagine the worlds where you have just bot-to-bot interactions.
My name is Jochem van Veer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called TheyDo, the journey management platform for business decision-making. We raised over $50 million and are growing globally. Our enterprise customers include Ford, J&J, the Home Depot, and Pfizer. I mean, wherever you look, understanding customers is key to staying ahead. But in order to do this at scale, aligning so many different teams with the customer journey is incredibly hard, but it is possible. I really wish this podcast existed before we started our company because so many companies are organizing around journeys and there's so much to learn. So in order to share what I'm learning, what I'm hearing with our community, I meet with industry experts. And in my video podcast, I'm here to explore the world of business strategy, design, and journeys, customer journeys, to really get an understanding of how leaders are changing their way in their business. So let's dive into the show. My guest today is Nathan Zahm. He's leading CX Alpha at Vanguard's personal investor business, where he drives digital experience design using analytics, behavior science, and financial planning to basically enhance client outcomes. Okay, so CX Alpha is an internal team at Vanguard, and we're going to dig into all of this today, dedicated to enhancing client investment outcomes by using those analytics and AI capabilities. But what is interesting is that previously, Nathan led Vanguard's research on target retirement and goal-based investing, helping shape strategies for target date funds and 529 plans globally. So he made the shift from actuary to CX, basically making the step from business to customer experience, which makes it all the better for the conversation that we're going to have today. But before we do that, we have to celebrate Vanguard's 50th anniversary, of which Nathan has been part for quite a while. So Nathan, congratulations, and thank you for making the time to being here.
Yeah, it's been a fun time to be at the firm. It's a lot to celebrate.
Right. Sure, we do. And let's do that by digging into CX Alpha today. Before we go into AI, behavior analytics, and understanding how people make financial decisions and how you're helping them, let's set the stage a bit. So what is CX Alpha? How did it come to be so that we can dive in from where actually it started from?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been pretty exciting. About 2.5 years we've had this program. And so it started about 5 years ago. We really started our modernization journey for our client experience. So everything from the underlying infrastructure to the front-end experiences that all of our clients use, a complete modernization effort there. Vanguard's mission, though, is not necessarily just to have a great CX, but to literally better the investment outcomes for our clients. And so as that modernization journey progressed, the question is like, all right, how do you also take the CX and really make it distinctively Vanguard? And that was where it's like, hey, there's an opportunity to take the client experience and have it add value to people's investments, help them make better choices, literally help them make it more likely that they'll reach their financial goals. And so CX, of course, is client experience. Alpha is the investment term. So typically alpha is used to describe returns above a benchmark. It's often associated with an investment fund manager adding extra value. The extra value is called alpha. In this case, the extra value we're trying to add, though, is through the CX. And so hence the term CX Alpha was born about 2.5 years ago, and we've been on the journey since.
So before CX Alpha, there wasn't any additional value, or how did Vanguard serve their personal customers? I know there was, but this is a leading question. But how was that different to our 2.5 years when it started? The way that Alpha was delivered to where we are today? What is the biggest shifts in how we've been successful?
Yeah, I think probably a few different fronts. So as you said, yeah, clients would have been getting value from Vanguard even prior to the existence of this program. I think one of the things that certainly the firm has been most famous for and certainly has delivered value over that entire 50-year period would be the investment funds themselves, so the mutual funds or the ETFs that the brand is synonymous with. From a client experience standpoint, many people would come use our website or mobile app to buy those funds, but they might not have necessarily thought, hey, is this experience also helping me in ways of either identifying tax opportunities, savings opportunities, portfolio opportunities that might make their chance at reaching their goals just a little bit better. What we did about 2.5 years ago was really start to proactively make efforts in that space, but also measure it. So many people would have been making good choices on the platform previously, but we might not have necessarily known, like, hey, if we update this kind of part of the experience, or if we add these features or these tools, can we prove it's making somebody a better investor? My team's job is not only to think of the client experience moments that could add value, but actually go all the way through, design the experimentation process, measure it, repeat, and then look for, like, hey, are we literally statistically lifting people's chances of financial success through the experience? And that's really where the rigor started to come in. So the mission has been the same for the whole 50 years. Hey, let's help investors get the best chance for investment success. Now it's like, hey, let's prove it. Let's prove not only the products are great at it, but so is the client experience.
And how many, when you say client, it is individual customers taking your services, correct? So how many clients are we talking today that you're impacting?
Yeah, so our predominant focus is what would be called Vanguard's brokerage platform, our self-directed investors. These are people managing money on their own behalf. And there's about 9 million clients that use Vanguard's brokerage platform to manage their cash, their ETFs, their mutual funds for different goal types: retirement, education savings, just general wealth building, buying their first home. So you get a wide range of clients, wide range of goals. But the goal is to serve all of them as best we can to help them reach those goals.
All right. So we're going to dig into behavior science behind this, but not before we go a little bit into your background, right? Because you've not been in customer experience your entire career. You started in actuaries, right? So
I did.
That's a big transition. And not many people who come from business going to customer experience, going to design are successful. In one of my latest episodes I had from Accenture, one of the key statements was there, like, it's better to be an MBA and then bolt on service design versus like being a service designer and then take on an MBA. Where are you on this? Like, what has being an actuary taught you about customer experience? And if you look back and where you are today, like, what are some of the lessons that you took away from that experience?
Yeah, I've had a really enjoyable career. I've certainly liked it. I feel like I've had probably a few careers just in the 20 odd years I've been at it. But yes, my journey really did start focused on kind of behind the scenes research. What is the best asset allocation somebody should have going into retirement, or how to spend their assets down in retirement, or if you're just had a child and figuring out how to build up enough money to pay for higher education. What does that look like? Loved it. It's important work. Feel like it has a lot of value. Helped impact people's goals. One of the things that we could see, though, as we did that research, was a lot of people aren't successfully making the best choices they could be making. So you could design an investment product, a target retirement fund, a 529 plan. If people use it, then great. They're going to get a great investment outcome. But what if people aren't using it? And if a lot of people aren't using it, or they're looking for more guidance along the way of, like, hey, I think I should use this, but I've got these other situations to consider, these other outside factors. How does that play into my decision making? And that's really where my interest in the client experience was born. So started working closer and closer with our development teams who were pulling our research and turning it into some of the digital products that powered our financial advice, that got me closer to the client experience. And then the closer still I got, I was like, oh, this is where a lot of the magic happens, is, hey, right there at the front end with the client, they're engaged, they're in that moment, they're either on the phone or they're navigating a digital experience. And this is the moment where they're going to decide, am I going to, invest it simply in cash? Am I going to buy an ETF? Am I going to do a multi-asset fund? And even those terms, I use them as somebody who spent a lot of time working in them. Maybe those terms are the wrong terms and they're not even helpful for people. So the closer I got to it, I was like, hey, this is actually, if you're right there with the client in those moments, that's where you can have some of the biggest impact on the outcomes they get. And that led me
What,
here. It's been a great ride.
so was there a particular moment where you're like, okay, now I'm interested, now I'm going on the customer experience bandwagon, so to say, or was this more like a gradual slope as you came across more of the actual customer interactions where they made these financial decisions, or was there like this one singular moment where like, okay, I'm gonna go all in on customer experience?
Yeah. Probably a mix. From a personal standpoint, I've always been very drawn to the individual investor. Both my parents are psychologists, so I think just a natural inclination towards like helping the individual. So that was always pulling me this direction towards a client experience, thinking about individuals. I think when I started to partner more with our development teams who were taking the research I was working on, trying to turn it into useful digital products for the clients. And you could see like somebody used it, great, but maybe you only had 25% engagement. Well, what about the other 75% of the people? And I think that's really the moment where I was like, all right, if you're going to try to lift not 1,000, not 2,000, but start measuring things in hundreds of thousands, hopefully millions of people helped and supported, you got to go to the client experience where that engagement is and find ways to get people to easily engage with the path you're trying to send them down and have it help them rather than trying to necessarily design the next new thing that they could do. Let's focus on getting them just simply to engage and take those right first initial steps.
All right. So where are you on the spectrum? Like business and then bolting on design and behavioral science, or having an education in psychology, if you will, or design and then bolting on business? Where do you think is the most effective way to progress in customer experience?
Yeah. I'm going to be biased toward the team setup. So by no means am I a client research expert, a UX design expert, a behavioral scientist, or an analytics person. If I'm anything, I'm probably an investment person. I think the main thing that I've learned along the way is nobody is all of those things. And quite honestly, I don't know that it's worth trying to be all those things because you'll never be the best at it. Better off actually finding somebody who is the best at each of those things, forming a singular team, create an agreed upon outcome. In our case, bettering clients' investment outcomes. It'd be a much better path. Individually, probably, pipe dream to think you could be great at all the dimensions. Better off to hire it and make a team out of it.
100% with you. So talk to me about your team, CX Alpha. Like you mentioned, we have a unified goal that we're all striving towards, or mission, if you will. What is the setup of the team? Like, how have you made people responsible? What are the different roles across the 4 disciplines that you have under your belt? Like, how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, and we've gone through a few different iterations over the last 2.5 years, but I think we're hitting a steadier state. So you'd have, in a similar construct to a traditional digital product team, we have a product owner. They're setting their roadmap, making sure that the KRs and objectives are in target and we're likely to hit them. And they're going to help guide the team to make sure everybody's doing work that's most likely to help support those big objectives. Then on that team, data analyst and analytics expert, critical. They help set up the initial problem definition, the experimentation process, measurement, and then kind of reforming the next hypothesis where to go. So big role for analytics. Client research, so our UX research team, what is the mental model that our clients are bringing to the situation? We're in finance. We think these problems are every day thought of. Of course, that's not the reality for most people. Our client research team is right there, figuring out what's the mental model they're arriving with. Put a financial planning expert there. All right, so what is the thing we actually want this person to do? What's the best thing they can do? But also, what's just better than what they were doing? Essentially, what's good, better, best? Maybe best isn't attainable, but maybe good is. And are we better off actually trying to get them to a better spot than they're currently in? And we'll work towards best. Pair that then, of course, with designers and developers. So this is going to be people actually building the infrastructure. They're going to be taking in insights from the analytics team, the financial planners, the client research, our UX strategists and designers, taking that experience and the developers actually building it. And then our behavioral science team. So they're there all the whole way through it. Partner with the analytics team, partner with the financial planning team, partner with the UX strategist to form that hypothesis with the analytics team, think about that good, better, best situation and what are the barriers to getting people to do it, and then work with the strategist of like, all right, what are the things we know about choice architecture, some of the behavioral biases that people might have, how do we combat them as best we can? So it takes a village, but it's a fun team.
I can imagine. And it's also like you're highly regulated, right? And we haven't even touched AI, which we will, but I just first want to dig into like the biases people have, like you said. Like, how do you draw the ethical line between guiding and nudging? Like, is there even a clear line to draw and say, this is how we are not going to overstep our role as financial advisors, and this is how people should actually create great outcomes and be protected for the downside? Like, how do you draw that line?
Totally. Certainly some of it's in the regulatory space. That'll, if you're in an advice relationship versus a non-advice relationship, those things, let's create clear boundaries from the jump. But then, once you know what space you're in, let's say you're in a non-advised situation, some things that are really important to us, around transparency. And, if you're wanting to provide somebody guidance of like, hey, we think typically if somebody is, in their 30s saving for retirement, these types of equity products or multi-asset products are often well suited towards it. But you need to think about all these other things. You're going to want to give them that guidance, that prompt of like, hey, here's what we think. But really also be careful of, hey, we don't know everything about you. You haven't asked us to manage your money on your behalf. We're right there in your living room with you, and we don't know, the other family assets you might have or the other goals or considerations you might have. And so we need to be careful. And in some ways, respect the client for all the unique elements that they've got to consider. There's a delicate balance between being very paternalistic of, hey, we're here to help you, but not overdoing it. So transparency is big because it in some ways helps like, yes, this is what we think, but we don't know everything. So you ultimately need to make the call. That's a key part there too. And then ease. Ease is obviously a CX principle in its own right of just having experience that somebody wants to use. But it's also really great if you're actually trying to get somebody to make a choice and help make it as easy as possible for them. In some ways, a lot of times what we're calling out to people isn't necessarily like, you must do this thing, but just recognize there's a choice here. Best not to ignore it. A great thing is, somebody's decided to save for retirement. They open up in the U.S. what we'd call an individual retirement account or an IRA. They need to pick how to invest that money. They're ultimately going to choose. We need to call their attention to that choice. If they want to know what we think, we can share it. But also, if they've got their own plan, we don't want to disrupt it. We want to make it easy for them to do that too.
So where does like personalization end and manipulation begin? I'm by no means saying you're manipulating, so don't get me wrong on that. Yeah. But there is this fine line, right? At some point, even guidance, or when you say like when people can access what we think, what you write there has impact on it, right? You could argue like that's manipulative. You could argue it's helpful. You could help make people ease into the transition or into the decision. Like, where does personalization end and manipulation begin? Is that something that you have defined?
Yeah, I think I probably put them in a bit of two different categories. When paths are very narrow, and all all paths lead you to singular activities, that's when we'd be worried that somebody was being potentially manipulated. A good example is if all paths lead towards you should go buy or sell a stock, and there really isn't oh, maybe you should hold it. Maybe you shouldn't trade anything today. Maybe you should stay in cash. Like, there are lots of things to consider. But if all paths lead to like one thing, that's going to look like manipulation. You could actually have somebody doing that, a firm doing that, even without personalization. If just all paths lead to one thing, it doesn't matter whether you personalized it or not. That's just going to be somewhat manipulative of, hey, there's probably lots of paths somebody should have considered here. You only showed them one. Versus, say, personalization, which could certainly make a narrow path look increasingly compelling, through whether data or nudges that make you feel like, oh, this is the path for you. But from our end, personalization can be quite helpful because what it's doing is mostly putting that decision in context. If we know you are 70 and nearing retirement, that's very different than being 30 and saving for retirement for the very first time. That age difference is very relevant, and you'd want to show somebody some pretty different sets of material and considerations as they went down their path of choosing how to save for retirement. But yeah, we tend to actually think of manipulation and then personalization in separate buckets.
Yeah. And is the other way also true, where you have a lot of data and drawing from behavioral science and then knowing what mental model people are in, like you said, can't we just predict what they will do or what they likely will do?
It, in theory, sounds quite easy. In practice, it's probably a bit harder than that. The reality is, when you're doing personalization, there's two big parts to it. There's the underlying data and infrastructure. So you need a really robust data set to do personalization on any of these dimensions. And if you're trying to be increasingly specific, you need the client to be providing you quite a bit of data. It's certainly obviously much more than age that would influence how somebody should be thinking about retirement. But a lot of times, age might be one of the only variables we've got. We might know how much they've put in their Vanguard account, but we have no idea how much they necessarily have outside of it. And so some of this is being aware of what you don't know, and being pretty honest with that, of like, hey, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, here's what you should consider next. And then there's the front end experience. What's it look like to a client? On one hand, relevant information is highly valuable to people. They don't have to go hunting for it. On the other hand, you can be overstepping if you use personal information the wrong way, or you could guess wrong and people are like, that's not me. Why did you think that? In some ways, it's almost disarming to get those things wrong. So I think it's a delicate balance of, do you have enough data to give people relevant information, but don't overdo it, and be careful of, if you do it wrong, it can be more disruptive than helpful.
Right. It sounds like you're talking about AI at the same pace, right? Personalization and AI are almost the same, right? If you have,
they have a lot of overlaps, that's for sure.
All right. So talk to me about the role of AI. And I can imagine if you're 2.5 years into CX Alpha, you were there not from inception, but a little bit after. Is that right? Or from inception?
For CX Alpha?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit after.
So right when LLMs became like standard, available, and everywhere?
Yes. Yeah, that would have been probably about 9 months into the job, I think, was when you start having the large language models start really hitting the market.
So how is the impact of using AI and using the data that you have available is changing the way that you think about personalizing financial decisions for your customers? Like, let's start there and then we can unpack it and make it more concrete for people listening in. But I think this is such a fascinating topic for many people in finance and helping people make better decisions. Like, sure, we have the hallucinations. Sure, we have a need of having a robust infrastructure and data hygiene to make it even work. but there's so much advancements we can do already today, almost out of the box. So talk to me about how your guys are thinking about using AI and helping your clients actually be driving better outcomes for themselves.
Totally. And what's important too is, AI has been around for a long time, and a huge part of our underlying infrastructure, whether it's people's intent, or easing the client experience, particularly if somebody's engaged with the phone channel. There's lots of AI-oriented bots and things like that that support those elements. A good example is some of the personalization efforts now. This isn't a large language model, but rather it's, hey, here's what the data we know about you. Here's the journey we can see you on digitally. Hey, here's probably the next bit of helpful information. That's AI powered there. I take large language models, a few different spaces, certainly that they have readily application. It's supporting even just our own call center crew. These are people that are the face of Vanguard to many individuals. Large language models, they're really great as you got a question and there's a wealth of information all over our own internal sites. How do you summarize it quickly? A large language model is pretty good at that. And you can really actually increase the effectiveness, the speed, the power of that human-to-human conversation. And so this is more behind the scenes from a Vanguard client's perspective, but actually still enabling that conversation to be much more fruitful. You hit on this a bit with the regulation piece. What's really important from a financial services standpoint is you got to make sure your information is fair, balanced, appropriate disclosures, disclaimers. There's a lot of rules to follow. Large language models are good at a lot of things. I don't know if rule following is a towering strength that I would put on them. And so you've got to have that consideration in there as well. If somebody's using it, how do you put the corners on this thing that make sure it's not hallucinating, or if it is at risk, a high risk of hallucinating? Maybe it says, I don't know. Large language models aren't known for saying, I don't know, but maybe they should say, I don't know, a little bit more when the information they're pulling out has a high probability that it's not going to be the most contextually relevant. So those are things that the teams are thinking through now. It's like, all right, we can point at a large language model at lots of data sets. Yeah, you can point it at somebody's just returns, balances, trade history, and just make it really easy for somebody to access it. You can make it a little bit more advanced and try to tip into guidance, but you got to be really careful regulatory-wise there. And you can do full-on assistance. But I think being thoughtful around the pace of that is important for any financial services company. Some wrong information can be really damaging. It's not a movie recommendation. You're generally talking somebody's financial life here, so you have to be probably diligent to a level that some other spaces that are experimenting with large language models may not have to have that same level of rigor, because the outcome, if something goes sideways, is less damaging to the end client.
Right. And how are we seeing this shift? Because you have people doing digital self-serve on, I think, the basic financial decisions. And then, like you said, they want to talk to a human being for the more important ones to offer that service as well. And now AI is coming in the mix. Like, are you seeing that slowly shifting in terms of like what your clients are asking from you, what they expect? Or is behavior almost indifferent to what AI has to offer, much like we are using jargon for all our financial services, but people just want to make sure that they can retire at the age they want and, not run out of money?
Yeah, I think we're still learning some of those pieces. As the digital experiences, whether Vanguard or elsewhere in the industry, continue to just get better and better. Certainly any of the more mundane routine tasks, people aren't going to call in for them. It's so easy, intuitive to navigate and execute. Personally, you're like, well, I'll save myself the 5 minutes and avoid a phone call and just get it done on my own terms whenever I would like. For the more complex conversations, somebody nearing retirement, somebody with a kid about to go to college, somebody about to withdraw money to purchase a house, we do see interest in a more robust conversation. What we don't know necessarily is, all right, who wants to have that with a human versus who wants to have that in a digitally enabled way versus who wants to have it with a bot. There's hypotheses, certainly, that younger individuals are going to be more comfortable with bots and digital engagement. But one of the things we also know is that as people's wealth increases, they tend to want more and more human engagement. And so you've got a bit of an effect here of, it looks like the older generation wants more human engagements than, say, a younger generation. But is that because they're less familiar with the technology? Or is that actually simply because their financial lives are more complicated? They've got more at stake. They got more wealth. They just would prefer a human touch given that the stakes are higher for them. And so I think we'll have to see how that plays out as the younger generations start to increase their numbers of years in the workforce. They start to build wealth. They start to get more complex financial situations. Will they still be as digitally inclined? Or will they actually also shift towards hey, I actually would like a human in the loop here. This is a big deal to me now. So that'll be some important experimentation. I think that we'll all need to go through as we continue to advance on it.
If you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast channel and leave a review. It makes all the difference. The Experience Edge podcast is where I interview business leaders, CX pioneers, and the best designers who share their insight on creating business impact, having an edge on the customer experience. Do you want more exclusive content and behind-the-scenes access? Check out the Experience Edge podcast on YouTube and LinkedIn so you don't miss a thing. Now let's get back to the conversation. Where are you on this, like in your mind? Where do you see this going? Will we have, let's say, Gen Z all tooled up with their favorite LLM, just interacting with Vanguard autonomously on their behalf, just having access to all their banking and their finance? Is that the scenario that you think will likely be in the next 5 to 10 years? Or will it remain, because there's so much on the line, something that we just don't dare to offload, or in your mind can't be offloading to AI in the near-term future?
Yeah, it's fun to imagine the worlds where you have just bot-to-bot interactions. I've got my own personal large language model, and I tell it to go interact with my financial services provider and execute some trades. I tell it to go interact with, my preferred shopping destination, pick up my groceries, or certainly place the order. Maybe even some drone delivers it. You can imagine that. The thing we find about money is it's very personal. There's probably a few dimensions of life that get the sensitivity that money does. I think people's health, their family, money probably comes not too far after those two. Maybe the next one after those two. And comfort with completely handing over the keys tends to be low. The people who have these advice relationships, a lot of our researchers have done some great work of understanding, hey, what drives people to financial advice? A lot of it's the emotional element there. There's peace of mind. There's comfort. There's this understanding that this person understands me. They understand my goals, and they're making decisions with me accordingly. And they're also easing my life. It's a lot of emotional benefits. There's certainly functional ones too. Functional benefits can be done digitally really well. The emotional ones are hard to replicate digitally.
What would be some examples of like a functional and an emotional benefit, just to clarify?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say you're supposed to have a portfolio, 60% in stocks, 40% in bonds. The market moves around, it does what it does. It causes your portfolio to drift. You rebalance it. That's the process of whatever went down, you're probably going to buy a little bit more of, get it back to where it should be. Whatever went up, you put it back down. You recenter your portfolio. That's pretty functional. It's mostly a math problem. You can have a human do it. Most of the humans actually even doing it at this point are doing it very enabled by technology, ours included. But it's very functional. Versus, hey, the market's been really volatile in April. I don't like that. Who are you going to ask that question to? Certainly, content and digital guidance and pieces like that can help, but particularly when people are either just personally more at ease with another human or their stakes are higher, the human in the loop does add a lot of value for folks. That's the emotional benefit.
Got it. So we're highly regulated and also cautious on making impact on people's lives directly using AI for, let's say, the customer or the client experience. In the internal world, it's slightly different, right? We can be a bit more experiential. We can use machine learning and AI for processing. And I'm sure you've been at the forefront of this for many, many years, way before LLMs became out of the box available to everyone. So what part of CX Alpha could not be real today without AI?
Yeah, I think some of the quick iterations in terms of how we are personalizing and some of the experimentation process. Yeah, just the process of, all right, clustering clients, hypothesizing different treatment strategies that might be helpful, and then collecting that data, getting it back, and then once you are able to draw meaningful conclusions, putting that at scale. That's the power of data and personalization. It's just really being able to quickly understand, the different types of people that are likely to be using the system, the different needs they have. Then, hey, let's try, things that we think might be effective. Try them quickly to be able to figure out which ones work, which ones don't. And then once you start finding things that work, scaling it into production. So those pieces, it's just really exciting. It's some of the things around CX Alpha, to your question much earlier. It's also much easier to do the things we're doing now. Just given where the world is at from a technology perspective, the speed of compute power, the ability to readily personalize based off of data, scaling things with AI. All of these things make actually delivering something like CX Alpha much easier than, say, it probably would have been 15 years ago.
So a lot of customer experience teams, research teams, insights teams are under pressure, right? Because they have a lot of people that are doing this work. And then we get AI to do part of the grunt work. How are you thinking about this? Do we need to do more with the same team? Are we doing the same with less people? Are we doing more with less people? Like, how do you think about using AI in CX Alpha and scaling the work that you're doing?
Totally. I think it's probably speed to outcome. One of the things that's certainly not changing for us, and I imagine it's probably not changing at most other firms, the outcome you're after. For us, CX Alpha team, that's, again, are we creating a measurable lift in people's financial outcomes? That's still the same. So AI should be enabling that. AI itself it's not a strategy itself. It's an enabling function. So a lot of what our expectations have been around AI is, all right, you should be able to help us get to that outcome faster. So, if it's in the design space, somebody should probably be able to come up with a lot of different iterations for design testing that much more quickly. Or if you're in the experimentation type space, data space, you should be able to understand what different client segments we're doing that much more quickly. And then, based off of those types of speed pieces, we should be able to then iterate just that more quickly to get people the experience they're expecting and one that's actually helping them that much faster. So I don't know that it's actually replacing. We haven't really seen it that way. I think, like most other iterations in the past, it's taking somebody's job you better learn how to use it. But what it's really doing is actually increasing the effectiveness of them in their respective roles, whether it's design, data, experimentation, or if you're in charge of product and leading it, your expected time to outcome is probably shrinking. And how do you think about capitalizing on that?
Right, we're seeing the same, right? We're seeing teams that take even from data to insight sometimes can take a month in a large organization, or seeing organizations take that down to a day, sometimes almost like instant, depending on the data and the structure they've put in place, right? So how are you thinking about triangulating like the customer feedback from the different sources, from the primary research you're doing, from the calls that your clients are having with the people giving the advice, from the support that you're giving, like all the different channels that people interact with you, and then the formal support channels. And I'm sure since you already send out a ton of surveys, so how are you triangulating all that data to understand like how to prioritize? Is that a common practice across your team? How are you thinking about using those data in the most optimal way?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've been spending a lot of time thinking about how do we get the most holistic view of the client experience, and use client experience in the like biggest sense of the term, everything from people's first thought of using us as a provider to their first experience, maybe in a public site experience, first account setup, first fund, first, second iteration, third iteration, first time calling in, lots of different moments for feedback there. And to your point, there's the feedback that people aren't telling us. In some ways, you can get feedback of just, hey, are they completing the journey that we think they're on, or that we would like them to be able to complete? To then, digital surveys, to then phone experiences and feedback you'll get after that, to then larger kind of commissioned style surveys of getting interviews with clients, in-person interviews, getting feedback there, why people joined, why they left, and really aggregating this all together. So our client research teams have actually been working to make sure we've got this most holistic view, because you can get even conflicting information. I think that's probably partly your point of, hey, on one hand, maybe some group is having an exceptional experience and the data points might be indicating that. But then on that very same experience, maybe somebody else had gone down a different path, was trying to get the same outcome, they had a bad experience. One that you're like, well, this isn't a happy path. But if the team that owns that journey only knows the happy clients, they're obviously not going to be seeing maybe some of those tails. That's where that holistic view has become increasingly important. So that's part of why we've been really happy to have our team structure we do. Client research isn't separate from our data analytics team. Those tend to be two of the biggest sources of truth of, hey, is this doing what we want it to do? We want those people right beside each other. Something you can call it quant and qual. You can call it averages and tails. The reality is you need that whole picture if you're going to build something that's truly great.
So it sounds like the common denominator is like the customer experience is like from the moment that they are almost like the first moment to setting up to ultimately being a lifelong customer, having all these financial interactions in their life supported by you. Sounds like a lot like a journey framework. Are you organizing your teams also by journey? Because you mentioned like the team owning that journey, or are there multiple journeys within a team? Like, do you have a journey structure in place to organize your teams?
Yeah, we do. And I probably think of it in two ways. So let's call them, journeys that somebody logs in and is trying to complete. This could be open an account, could be add a bank, could be make a trade, could be withdrawal assets, any number of those things that somebody's coming in and it's a task they're trying to complete. And then those journeys often you want them to be as easy as possible, particularly when somebody is trying to engage with their money. They want the peace of mind to be really high. They want to know that it's there, it's safe, it is what they expect it to be, and then whatever action they're trying to take to be very easy to execute. They usually have something in mind. It's our job to make it sure that's as easy as possible. So that's one set of journeys, and we'll have teams that own a number of those different elements across our digital experience. And then there's a bigger journey, a journey that's not a task, but maybe a journey that's called, could pick on retirement again, a lifetime journey. Somebody might become a client at 25 years old and be a client all the way till they're 95 years old. That whole retirement experience is a journey. Our job then is to think through of like, all right, what's it like to be taking that very first step, thinking about your future when you're in your 20s, to, all right, you're in the thick of it now in your 30s and 40s, but you've got complex trade-offs you're probably trying to make, navigating multiple priorities. All right, now in your 50s and 60s, you're probably thinking transition. How are you going to do that? Do I have enough? What's that going to look like for me? And now you're in your 70s, 80s, 90s, and you're thinking through, all right, I've got enough. What's my legacy? What am I leaving behind? That's a whole journey in its own right. And so you need to have journeys that are very able to help somebody do exactly what they want to do in a given day, but they need to then connect to, hey, the bigger journey of what somebody's actually trying to do. Nobody's actually trying to just withdraw money or just trade or just open an account. That's part of a much bigger story. We need to think about journeys both ways. And so we set up our teams actually both ways. You'll have teams that are very deep and well suited to hit those tasks, but then also teams that are thinking through like, all right, what's it look like to be here for many years, hopefully many decades.
And what is in the middle? Because like if you think about like a decade-long journey, multi-decade-long journey, which is pretty common in finance, insurance, and then we have like these task journeys. Some have like a level of goal journeys in between that are maybe bigger, like getting your first child, moving homes, and all the first things that will happen when you get married. Those are events within that like life journey, if you will. There's other ways to do this. Like, is there a middle layer between that, like lifelong journeys versus like task journeys that you use?
Yeah, I think what we would often call those on our end is moments that matter. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think you hit a couple right there. Having a child, getting married, moving, starting a new job. These are moments where you're probably doing some sort of financial activity. Chances are your stress is probably also higher in a lot of those life moments, and you're looking for support. To our earlier conversations on personalization, this is when personalization can make a big deal. Now, if somebody's indicated they've just had a child or they're spending a lot of time looking at education savings plans, hey, is there a moment here to provide that contextually relevant information, make it easy to take the steps that we think would be most helpful given the moment that they're likely in from a life standpoint. Those moments that matter actually are really critical to get right. It's when you can build trust with somebody and be like, hey, they were really there for me then. Can also unfortunately let them down then of, hey, I was trying to do this and it wasn't what I was after. But yeah, absolutely. Like life's got some major financial moments. They also tend to be connected to other important life moments as well. But being there, having the system there, a journey there to meet people where they are when they're in those moments is definitely an important part too.
So then the hardest part once you have this in place becomes prioritization, right? Because there's so many opportunities in all these different journeys and all these different like levels of abstraction. What have you found most useful? Or like what is the way that you help to prioritize? I can imagine like the task journey teams, they have their own little role and they can execute that journey end to end. But like when it gets a little bit higher in the levels of extraction, you need different teams, you need different priorities, everything is conflicting. What I like always to see is that there's, especially in enterprise, there's always in a contact center, that's the gold mine, right? That's exactly where the low value calls are being made, where we have insight into what are people calling for, what are the different pain points. But guess what? Like to solve that, you need to look completely in a different direction in another part of the business. So, and then we get into the mess of the prioritization. So it sounds like you've got a very good structure in place. And I'm curious if you can shine some light on how you are thinking through prioritizing what matters throughout like the different levels of abstraction, and then all the way from the life cycle journey to the task-based journeys. Like, how are you thinking about that? What works for you?
Yeah, I can probably hit it from two levels as well. From our whole digital experience standpoint, it's exactly as you said. You've got considerations around, hey, how do we make digital tasks much easier, particularly ones where, hey, somebody's having to call. It'd be great if they didn't have to call for this. They're probably not enjoying the fact that they have to call for it. How do we make these things as easy as possible? That's what you're going to get elements there. You're going to get ones where, hey, clients are really looking for additional support in a particular area. Maybe it's enhanced, a pre-retiree experience. Somebody that's in those few moments, few years before retirement. How do we bolster that? And is that a great way to meet clients' biggest needs? And then you've got if you launch a new product, a new service, you got to figure out growth strategies for that. How do we promote this? How do we make this prominent so people are aware of it? If it's something new for us to offer, clients probably don't know we have it. How do we make them aware of it? The prioritization process is a robust one. So we'll work. Our digital experience team is a central team across all of our client-facing divisions, and take in all of those priorities. And this is really where the importance of a product owner running an agile product team comes into play. So they'll understand, hey, here's all the key results that are important to the organization. Here is how I think I can deliver value in a way that's thoughtful, efficient, and sequenced in a way that's appropriate, and also has the feedback loop from a client standpoint built into it. And then we iterate upon that. Sometimes there's needs to accelerate some parts, and you make those technical trade-offs, but definitely an iterative process there.
Oh, fascinating. So your product owners are actually able to not only communicate the business needs, but also tie the customer feedback and the insights that you're capturing to that. That's their job.
100%. Yeah. So, our digital product teams, they're going to be highly connected to all of our client research teams. They're actually be embedded within their product teams. So they're going to have voice of client loud and clear, right there. Of like, hey, is this easy? Is this hard? Is it confusing? Have you oversimplified it? Is it too fast? You're going to get all of that feedback. Plus, they're the key liaison to the business strategy. What are the outcomes actually most important to organization? And then work through of like, all right, here's in a roadmap we think where we can meet the clients where they are, hit the most strategic elements, and then get that feedback. It's an iteration. It's not to say it's certainly not one and done for the product owners when they're going through that process. But we'll enter into that process for next year, not in the too distant future. It's actually a really fun one. You get to really envision kind of the art of the possible of what can happen in the next 12 to 18 months, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, what's fascinating is also that in a lot of financial institutions, there's a very solution-oriented prioritization way of working in place that is thinking about the business needs. And then product owners typically think as owners, and they really want to, prioritize what's on their roadmap. And, if the customer is in the way, then we probably skip it. So how have you been able, or how has Vanguard been able to balance that specifically? Like, how is that a culture thing? Is that more like, no, we've already been doing this since a long time, almost 50 years. I don't know if that's true. Or is that because CX Alpha is so focused on client experience and bringing that in, or any of the above? Like, how do you think you've pulled it off in a different way than more traditional financial institutions are still struggling with this issue?
Yeah, I think some of it cuts back to Vanguard's mission. I think most leaders here could probably recite it. It's taking a stand for investors, treat them fairly, give them the best chance for success. And so you mentioned client in the way. I don't know that anybody here would ever even dare think such a thought. The whole reason the firm exists is for the client. The structure, the way we're set up actually is for the client. We have a very unique ownership structure here in the US for the firm, where the mutual funds and ETFs actually own the US firm, and it creates this alignment that's pretty unique. And so because of that, the voice of the client is critical to us. That's the reason the firm exists. We're here for them. And so processes that are inclined to have the voice of the client be very loud and clear tend to be favored. That said, we obviously are still running a regular business in other regards. And so to be blind to, hey, operational needs, strategy needs, growth needs, well, you can't run a business if you're not thinking about those elements as well. So they naturally get in there because it's the proper way to run a successful company, period. But that voice of the client, that's an important part of the firm's DNA. So it's always been there from the whole firm's perspective. You're probably just seeing it manifest itself from a CX standpoint in the way we've set up the product operating system.
Yeah, so people listening go like, yeah, voice of customer, check, I have that, right? We run a bunch of surveys, so we have a VOC program, so we're good, right? There's a lot more to it. Can you speak about the way that you would define the voice of customer in Vanguard's terms? Like, what does that entail? Like, do we see literally like videos of customers show up in a board meeting and then decisions get made upon? Or is there always like a structured data element to quantifying the impact? Like, how does this play out in practice? Like, I imagine there's more than surveys, but again, making an assumption.
Yeah. No, it gets back to my point on essentially the quant and the qual. Obviously, when you've got the number of clients we're fortunate to have trust us, we're going to have some pretty robust data sets. We should be looking at them all the time, constantly. We do. Whether it's basic statistics around client satisfaction, CSAT scores, Net Promoter Scores, NPS, journey completion rates, and kind of in the moment survey responses from different journeys. All of that data is going to be coming back to our product teams constantly. But then that's not going to tell you the whole story. And so this is where those client interviews come in. We do watch videos often. I have any given month a number of client interview sessions where I get to just drop in and hear about what somebody's thought of our latest experience. Was it easy to do what they were trying to do? Did we actually understand their intent? Did we meet them where they were? Were we off base? And you get that feedback. And I think everybody here is so passionate as you look at that heavy quant digital data that's telling us kind of, hey, what's the aggregate? What's the masses doing? And then you get that voice of the client and really feel it. And it helps explain. Often it helps explain the tails, but maybe it also helps explain what's happening in the averages and in the middle. Then we get that holistic picture, and then you can be like, all right, we think we've got a pretty good hypothesis then of, hey, these parts are successful. Here's where clients are struggling. Here's why we think they're struggling with what we've built, and here's where we think we should then spend our next quarter iterating upon, and then you'll repeat that loop again. Look at the data. Did you see lifts in the aggregates? Have those same conversations with clients. Are they expressing the same frustrations? Have they, if we hit all their needs and they're just full of joy, or have they actually been like, yeah, you solved this, but what about over here? Now I'm, got another question for you. It's definitely a progress over perfection effort. That's for sure.
There's always progress over perfection. The work is never done, and when the work is done, there's more work to do. So how are you thinking about the future of CX Alpha? Do you believe that you've just started, or is customer centricity, because it's so rooted in the DNA of Vanguard and the way you operate, this is already a sizable operation and it's just making sure that you keep on and keep up with customer needs all the time? Or do you believe like this is the start of something that's more scalable? Like, where do you see this go?
Yeah, I probably go towards the latter. Start of something even more scalable. I think from an industry perspective, Vanguard likes to be a disruptor. I think we pride ourselves on disrupting the mutual fund industry and then the ETF industry, and working on the advice industry as well, of providing just really high value for clients. And we think CX is actually maybe one of the newest spaces where, again, we can see the ability to disrupt and differentiate. There's a lot of different financial services firms out there. People have a lot of choice. And some parts of it are somewhat ubiquitous. You can buy a Vanguard ETF on countless number of brokerage platforms here in the US. But what's the experience around buying that ETF? What's that ecosystem? Is that ecosystem aligned to the outcome you're after, or is, hey, over time that CX going to nudge you towards other products and services maybe that aren't in your best interest, or aren't what necessarily the thing that's going to help you the most of achieving whatever your financial goal may be? So I think we see CX Alpha not just as a, hey, we can help clients, but actually a key place for Vanguard to do what it likes to do, which is push the financial services industry as a whole to align to its clients and give them the best shot at hitting their financial goals as possible. So CX Alpha, we're excited. Got a good road ahead of us.
I can imagine. So thank you so much for joining me today. If people want to know more about how you approach this and understand how to get a little bit more alpha than they have on leading customer experience in their financial institution, I guess that's the most interest that you're getting from the listeners today. Like, where can they find you? Like, what is the best place to reach out to you?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably a great spot. So you can just find me on LinkedIn, Nathan Zahm. There's not a whole lot of us out there. Yeah, that's a great spot to connect. You usually get a number of good messages from folks, and always happy to connect back with them.
Thanks. You have such a unique position, being so customer-centric as a brand, and then also leading CX Alpha in this way. Thank you also for sharing with us today, like your tactics, strategies, and the way you think about approaching things. Very helpful, and I really appreciate you joining me today.
Really, thanks a lot for having us. Always fun. To be able to share the story. It's something we're certainly passionate about on our end. So thanks for taking the time with us today.
Thank you. All right, and that's it. Thank you so much for listening. If you found it valuable today, don't forget to subscribe to the Experience Edge on your favorite podcast channel, leave a review, and share it with your team. I'd be delighted. Today's episode was brought to you by Daydo, the AI journey management solution for enterprise. To have an edge on your business strategy and to know why your customers do what they do, visit daydo.com and explore more resources to accelerate your customer experience game. And remember, the journey to creating customer-centric impact never ends, and here's always a new edge to discover in doing things differently. Next week, new episode. Until then, pushing the edge, stay inspired. See you in the next episode.